Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJcity UK lab. Today we are doing my full review on the new flagship Prime Series hardware from Denon DJ, the SC6000, the 6000M and the X1850 mixer. Lots to get into, so let's get right to it. One quick technical thing to get out of the way, the LEDs in the Prime series always look weird on video, flashing away. You see it in all videos, even Denon DJ's own. It's down to power cycles and camera frame rates, but rest assured, that's not how they look in real life. Just wanted to point it out because as the person making these videos, it annoys me, but in the flesh they look completely normal. The first thing I need to talk about in this review is the accompanying Engine Prime software. Since the debut of the Prime series, it's always been the elephant in the room, and I've famously never given Denon DJ a pass on it. Well, the good news is it's fine now. Yes, there are a few things I wish it did a little better, and a few more things I wish it could do, mainly on the tagging and management side, but on the whole, it's far more usable than it used to be, with a sync manager for loading up your media now, and significantly improved analysis. It also has variable beat grids, so is much better for non-quantized music and transition tracks than it used to be, and it remains dramatically faster at loading media than the main competition. So whilst there is still room for improvement, using the software is no longer the frustrating experience it once was, and I'm saying that having used it more regularly in 2020 than in any preceding year. We'll come back to it when Denon DJ release future updates, but for now, that's really all you need to know. I'm also going to keep my thoughts on the X1850 mixer fairly brief, which is only right as clearly Denon DJ did the same. The 1850 is fundamentally the same mixer as the 1800, with some tweaks to the effects and improved sound quality, and that's really about it. There's still a lot to recommend it as the heart of a Prime series setup. The main effects are excellent. I love the separate filters and sweep effects on each channel, and there's a lot to be said for how well it integrates with the players, with color coding, track preview and synchronized effects all delivered via the built-in LAN hub. It's also aggressively priced at $1,100 in the US, and with the improvement in sound quality, it would be wrong for me not to recommend it. But I was never exactly blown away by the 1800 in the first place back in 2017, so it would be dishonest of me to try and pretend I'm impressed by being given effectively the same mixer 3 years later. If the X1850 appeals to you, I can promise you won't be disappointed by it, but for me it's just not as special as the players, and I need Denon DJ to deliver something equally exciting with their next mixer. Because, oh boy, are these players special. Regular viewers will know I was already a big fan of the SC6000s and the SC6000Ms in particular. Back in 2017 they seemed completely ahead of their time, and now in 2020 they kind of still do, especially in light of what the competition have responded with this year. We'll start with the basics. Street price in the US is just under $1,500 for the regular 6000 and $1,700 for the M, with the only difference being the spinning platter. Both players are dual layer devices, which means you have control of and outputs for 2 separate decks in the same unit. It's important to keep that in mind as we go through this review. You are getting 2 decks in one here. Using dual layers is by no means as comfortable as using separate physical players, but it's perfectly usable. I've done entire gigs with a single Prime Series player, with instant doubling between layers being my preferred method. Build quality is similar to the 5000s with a plastic body and full aluminium faceplate. I found the durability of the 5000s and these to be absolutely spot on, with no apparent wear and tear whatsoever in my time using them. When it comes to sound quality, it's pretty hard to judge a player at the best of times, as so much of the sound is determined by the mixer they're fed into. And of course, in 2020, I've been unable to test the players on a big club system, where any flaws might become more apparent. But from my testing with studio monitors and lots of different mixers, I found nothing to complain about with the 6000s at all. Nice, clean, transparent sound all round. The analog output is slightly less hot than on competing players, which may colour some people's impressions, as opposed to the digital output, which is about the same as you'd expect. What I can say is that I've seen these and the older 5000s be adopted by quite significant numbers of rotary mixer gearheads in the past few years, which does suggest that many in that community are satisfied with the quality, and that's a very good sign for Denon DJ. One big change with the 6000s is in the aesthetics. I never minded the bright colour scheme of the older models, but it didn't work for some people, and so now the 6000s have a more subdued, arguably more professional look to the pads, dials, buttons and lighting. Usability has not been impacted, everything is still easy to see, but it definitely looks cleaner and more slick. A lot of the controls have a more rubbery kind of feel, which works well in some places and less well in others, mainly according to your taste. The pads are definitely responsive, but have more travel than the buttons found on the competition, which may not appeal to some users. I rather like that positive action, but your mileage may vary. The pads do still contain a variety of modes: hot cue, loop, roll and slicer, all of which are nice to have right there at hand. One feature which often gets overlooked is the ability to perform a loop roll within an already playing loop, which can produce some fantastic creative results. The positioning of the performance pads is a point of debate. Now there is a competing product which has gone in a different direction, but from my point of view, I've never found having them at the front of the player to be a hindrance, and instead have always been appreciative of having them so readily accessible. Speaking of looping, I've always loved the auto loop knob, which allows you to set the length of and then activate a loop with one control. The length set there also determines the beat jump length, which I find convenient, although some users might prefer a separate control for that. Whilst we're on the bottom half of the player, I'll mention the pitch controls. The pitch slider itself is pretty much perfect, with just the right resistance, and it's extremely accurate, particularly in my favoured plus and minus 4% pitch range. And then we have the pitch bend buttons, which honestly I never thought I would care about, but now find completely indispensable. It's incredibly rare that I'll ever push or drag the platter on the 6000s when pitch bending, as using the dedicated buttons is a far more consistent and precise way of working. We'll talk connections briefly. There isn't much change from the 5000s, with an SD card slot and USB port for media tucked safely away underneath the front, as well as two other USB-A ports for media on the rear, with a USB-B slot for connecting to a computer. There's no Serato DJ Pro support yet, although that has been promised, and there's also a really accomplished virtual DJ integration available already, which works really well. Also on the back are stereo analog outputs for layers 1 and 2, as well as digital outputs for both. The IEC power socket is now locking, which is a nice touch for pro environments. Related to that, like Denon DJ's older players, if power is lost for whatever reason, the 6000s do stay active long enough to shut down properly and ensure your drives don't get corrupted. And finally, there's an Ethernet port, which has a few uses. Firstly, you can link up to 4 players using the hub built into the X1850 or a regular network switch. And secondly, you can connect to other software like the timecode front of house software, Resolume for visuals, and SoundSwitch. I'll do a dedicated video about SoundSwitch soon. I've spent much of this year messing with lighting on my live streams, as that's where DJing happens in 2020, and I've been pretty much blown away by how well it works when using the Prime Series standalone hardware. You need a computer to run SoundSwitch itself, but it picks up data over the network with Denon DJ's StageLink protocol and is a seamless experience. The players do feature Wi-Fi connectivity as well, which we'll get to, and I also need to mention the built-in SATA Bay underneath each player. For mobile DJs in particular, this is a pretty incredible option to have. With a sizable SSD installed in each deck, you can have your entire back catalogue library ready to access at any time, and with redundancy as well. Combined with the dual layers, you literally have the ability to lose an entire player to, say, a drink spillage, and still carry on performing perfectly comfortable with the other player. I will note that the space in the bay is tight, and the SATA cable not particularly flexible, but you should only have to install it once. So we move on up to the screen, which has been upgraded from the already rather generous 7 inches on the 5000s to 10.1 inch. I'll be honest with you here, when I first saw pictures, I thought it was a bit dumb, a little excessive. Then I tried them back in January and my opinion didn't really change all that much. It wasn't a problem, just I thought unnecessary. Then I got my units for review and I used them for the first time on a stream with a 5000 as a third deck. It took about 45 minutes of that set before I looked over to the 5000 and thought, that screen is so tiny, how did I ever think that was big enough? I compare the experience with going to big screen phones. The first time I saw someone's enormous Samsung while I was on my iPhone 5, I couldn't understand why anyone would want such a giant screen. But then here I am looking at that old iPhone in 2020 and I'm astonished by its tininess. I do think Denon DJ could do a bit more with all that screen real estate on offer. Yes, you can see more files when browsing, but that's about all they've done with it. Recent leaks via Laidback Luke suggest there are more changes coming, but I have to judge the players on what they do today, and I definitely think there is more that can be added, especially when using both layers at the same time. The screen has a fast refresh rate, so waveforms are smoothly rendered, and it's clear from a wide variety of viewing angles. I could handle it being a touch brighter on the highest setting, but the brightness hasn't actually been a problem. It also seems to reject greasy finger marks quite well, which is nice, and it helps keep the players looking clean without too much work on your part. The display is multi-touch, so not only can you swipe through crates and load tracks with gestures, but you can also pinch the waveforms to zoom. Touch control is accurate and precise and responds very quickly to input across the board. And so with that, we need to talk about what lives inside that screen, Engine OS. This is of course the heart of the product and indeed the whole Prime series. From the diminutive Prime Go to these players, all the Prime devices are based on the same operating system and I'm guessing very similar processors. After extended use, I'm pretty sure the actual processing power of the 6000s isn't much changed from the 5000s, but that speaks to the 5000s being over-spec'd rather than being a negative for the new players. The time stretching is very powerful with a superb algorithm, one of the best I've heard, even at very large pitch ranges. You can also adjust key up and down yourself manually and sync the key of a track with any other deck of your choice. Library navigation is simply excellent with the choice of touch or hardware scrolling and loading depending on your preference. You can also change the view size, add tracks to a prepare crate, build and edit crates on the player and search with different filters applied. You can preview tracks without loading them and scrub through just by tapping on the waveforms. There we see one big advantage to using the X1850 mixer, as that has the ability to prevent those previews from going live when the fader is open, a nice pro touch. Beat grids can be adjusted on the fly, although I'd like the ability to change the BPM rather than just shift the grid around. And on the subject of grids, where the Prime series really shows its mettle is with the onboard analysis. It may be that you never want to play files directly from folders on media which hasn't been prepared in Engine Prime, but you certainly can. Or you may never want to load in a USB stick prepared with Rekordbox and work with that library analysing on the fly, but again, you can. Even better, however, that power to analyse files allows for integration of streaming services right into the players. Now, some people might be suspicious of my taste for streaming, as I also work for BeatSource. However, cards on the table, I genuinely think that BeatSource and BeatPortLink are the best services going. We wouldn't be making them if we didn't believe that. But if those services didn't exist, I'd still be all over streaming on the 6000 with one of the other services instead. Only one of them, as the other is hot garbage. Having ready access to an enormous library of music directly inside your hardware is simply a superb experience which can't be found anywhere else. The integration is also absolutely seamless. You connect to Wi-Fi, log into your service of choice, and then all the relevant content shows up. Tracks are analysed again on the fly, and the grids, your cues, etc. are all saved to any connected drive, including a drive in the SATA Bay. Without any media connected, streaming still works fine, but none of that info is able to be stored to speed up future load times. On a similar note, you can now access your own personal cloud with the 6000s too, thanks to Dropbox integration. As with BeatSource and BeatPortLink integration, that's currently in public beta, but it looks like it will work just as well. You sync crates or playlists to Dropbox via Engine Prime on your computer, and then you can log into the service on the players and access your own files from the cloud. It's another step towards a fully cloud-based future, and I'm delighted to see it. One fundamental aspect of Engine OS which allows all of this tech is that tracks are cached in their entirety when loaded to the deck, wherever they're being loaded from. So whether the source is the cloud, a linked player, or even local media, if that data pipeline is interrupted, the track continues to play in full, which means if you lose your network connection or even accidentally pull out the wrong USB stick, the track won't stop. Very slick indeed. To finish up, we need to talk about the Jog Wheels, which have been sized up to 8.5 inches in diameter, impressively doing so with no increase to the width of the player itself. The thing I liked least about the SC5000s was the static platter. The central display was cool, offering a virtual playhead, loop length display, artwork or a custom logo, and indeed that's still on the 6000s, looking even better. But whilst the capacitive touch technology worked fine in itself, on the 5000s the physicality was just a bit wrong. It was always too heavy, and the momentum just felt off when queuing and scratching. So I'm pleased to say that the static platter on the regular 6000 is a huge improvement. It's much lighter, although I could happily see an even lighter setting myself, and the way it moves just feels a lot more natural. You can also adjust how responsive they are to pitch bending, so you can really customize the feel to your own taste. I'm not entirely convinced there will ever be a capacitive platter that I truly prefer over a mechanical one, but some DJs do prefer them, and whatever your taste, if you're a static platter kind of DJ, I'm confident that you'll get on with these very well. But of course that's not the whole story with these players, as Denon DJ offer the 6000M with a spinning platter powered by a high torque direct drive motor, and yeah. Unless you're new here, I expect you already know how much I dug the 5000Ms, and these are equally on point. The size is a bit of a weird choice in some respects, falling between the often found 7 and 10-inch vinyl diameters. It means there's no way to take off the acrylic control discs and replace them with records of the same size. And whilst I do think the supplied discs are the best ones from the company to date, I still prefer the feel of regular vinyl. So in a lot of clips in this video, you'll see my custom 7s from Digilog Designs on the platters instead. They work great. I'm just wasting a bit of the platter and therefore foregoing the extra control that offers, which I'm sure many will welcome. By going for the M's, you lose the central display naturally, but there's nothing there I really miss, as the loop length is on the main screen anyway, and the movement of the platters does away with the need for a virtual playhead. You do still get the illuminated ring around the outside, colour coding each layer. I will take a small bit of credit for one feature at this point. As someone who cues to the needle with regular turntables instead of 12 o'clock, I, like some other DJs, would put a sticker on the 5000s at around the 2 o'clock mark. So I hassled Denon DJ about putting a permanent marking on there on the 6000Ms, and when the final production units showed up, they had one. The implementation of the spinning platter is just superb. Really high resolution, instant start is available if you want it, and there are no issues with fluctuation of the pitch. Simply rock solid performance, all the benefits with none of the potential downsides. I know there are plenty of DJs who don't really find spinning platters on a media player to be that exciting, but for me it's the perfect marriage of old school and new school tech in the one device, so I absolutely do. Above all else, it's just fun. So there you go, my take on the SC6000 players and the X1850 from Denon DJ. The mixer we'll get out of the way first of all. It's a good mixer. If it appeals to you, go ahead and get it. You won't be disappointed. It's a quality product. It's well made, has great sound, loads of really cool features. It just doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't excite me in the same way that the players do. And they certainly do excite me like nothing else out there, because they're just pushing the limits of what can be done with a media player. You know, I hope that if you've watched this channel regularly, you'll know by now that I'm not a fanboy for any particular brand, platform, manufacturer. What I am is a fanboy for dope, innovative DJ technology. And I challenge anyone to spend any time on the 6000s or 6000Ms and not come away thinking this is dope, innovative DJ technology, because it just is. They are absolutely pushing what can be done. That, you know, inbuilt analysis, the giant screen, the fact that you've got all the streaming services in there. This is all pushing stuff forward. And the motorized platter. Yeah, all right, we've seen it with the 5000 and 5000M before. We've had that already, but it didn't quite catch the imagination of people in the same way, I think, as the 6000s have in 2020. And I think one reason behind that is the fact that people have been locked down. People are DJing in different places now. People are DJing on live streams, etc. All of a sudden, that whole club standard thing, which we all talk about, myself included, it's not really a factor anymore. If you're not playing in clubs, why does what the club standard is matter to you? That's a really it's a big thing to get your head around. And it has been for me. But I've used the Prime series more in 2020 than I ever have before, because I've not been out. You just do the default. Even if you're a DJ who plays off media players, it's very easy to just say, well, I'm not going to cart my own stuff out to the gig. I'll just go and use what's there. And generally, that is a competing product. Well, now, I don't have any gigs at the moment. I got nothing. I'm DJing on Twitch. So why do I care about having the club standard? And I think a lot of DJs are thinking about that, not just with the Prime series, but with different software, different platforms, just trying new things out in these times. It's a great time to do that and try and push what you're doing with your own DJing. So yeah, I think they're a solid product. They don't ever feel like they're pushing so far towards the cutting edge that they have a risk of falling off it. You know, everything inside feels reliable and solid. The performance is absolutely there. So if you're in that position where you're thinking, yeah, maybe I don't just want the club standard anymore, then I can promise you the 6000s will not be a letdown. For me, it's the M's. Yeah, that spinning platter, that is a killer feature. I know some DJs have grown up with static platters. That's what they're used to. And the regular 6000s will serve them very well. I know a few of my buddies in real life who've now bought the regular ones. That's the player for them. They're very happy. But for me, it's that spinning platter, the M, that direct drive motor. That just brings back the roots of DJing into media players. And for me, that's a very special experience. Thank you for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks, and product reviews. I'll see you soon.